Okay, so is this really abusive or is it not? What am I talking about? I'm talking about a character from a story, but I'm talking about something which is quite a controversial topic, I guess. Now, this is a bit of an impromptu video because I just wanted to discuss this just to get your opinion on this and to share my opinion on this. So the story in question here, or the story that we're talking about, is Vassa. Now, Vassa is a character, one of the main characters from the Tales of ARCA series. She has one novella and two in the making, and she's also part of the novels as well. Now, what makes Vassa very unique is that Vassa has an inherent dark power, one of which she's unable to control, one of which she's really unable to contain, and one of which actually grows in power the more she uses it. Now, what's happened to Vassa in this story is her surrogate brothers have taken her to a, how can I put this, technical specialist who has fitted her with what can only be described as an exoskeleton, which doesn't do anything to her powers, but more or less restricts her movement and causes her a significant amount of discomfort that prevents her from using that power. Now, what we later on find out in the overarching story is this was an incredibly bad idea. But the question here isn't whether or not that works. The question here is whether or not that was a difficult and controversial decision for those characters to make, being that Vassa was a very young girl when that exoskeleton was first fitted. Now, although we're talking about fiction here, some people do get caught up in the realisms and the, I suppose, the reflections of the real world in fictional stories. And obviously, as you can imagine, the Tales of ARCA takes place in a fantasy else world that has very little to do, in the beginning of the story anyway, has very little to do with our values here in the real world. So somebody of Vassa's age, that being sort of 5 or 6 when this skeleton was first fitted to her, in the Tales of ARCA story would be incredibly dangerous. We're talking about children of the ages of 1, 2, and 3, which have the powers of Il Huido that are able to actually end the lives of grown adults. We're talking about incredibly powerful children. So the decision to go about protecting your surrogate sibling by doing something which harms them, but protects them and protects everyone around them because they're unable to control this power, is not so much a controversial issue inside of the story, but obviously for readers, it brought up a few questions about, you know, the moral and I suppose the integral value of the decisions that have been made by those characters. Me personally, if that was my little sister, I would want to do everything for her to help her, but I'm not sure that I would go as far as to do something that harmed her, that even if it was going to help her, I'd rather try and find another way around that. But the people that we're dealing with in these stories, while ARCA has some advanced technology in certain areas, much of their civilization is archaic, and therefore they use very primitive tools and very, sort of primitive mechanisms to navigate through their lives and their daily lives. And so they're making decisions which we might consider extremely old-fashioned and outdated. But I don't see this as being controversial at all, really, honestly. But if you do, then let me know in the comments, let me know what you think about this story, whether or not that is something that maybe is pushing the boundaries a little bit. When we discuss the Tales of ARCA series in further detail, when we discuss some of the other stories, you'll realize that this is scratching the surface of what people will probably be upset about. There are children in this story who are literally, how can I put this? Oh, there's no other way that I can put this. They're dangling in the streets, and then they're not alive or living. So, as you can imagine, there's going to be a lot of other things that we can talk about throughout this series. But Vassa is one of my favorite characters, definitely one of my favorite stories to write as well. I'm currently editing the second of her novellas, and the third of her novellas is outlined and is actually in development as we speak. So I look forward to bringing the rest of her story. But if you haven't read it yet, go ahead and read Vassa Bleeding Dark. That's a novella from the Tales of ARCA series, and you can go ahead and read that on my website, thedreamhold.com. So yeah, that's Vassa, and hopefully I'll speak to you again soon about some of the other stories in this Tales of ARCA series. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.